Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to discuss Chapter 10, Feminist Models of Crime. The assumptions that guide this chapter are that society is characterized by gender-based inequality in favor of men. Essentially, what's argued or what is assumed in this particular chapter is that we have a society where power is disproportionately located and concentrated amongst the gender of men. With that, another assumption is that gender is a social construct, meaning that through a process of socialization, you have identified expectations for how men and women should behave differently. So, for example, the assumption is that women should be naturally nurturing, sociable, passive, and docile, whereas men should be aggressive, tough, thrill seeking, and unsociable. And then lastly, the final assumption of this perspective is that the criminal justice system treats women and men differently due to a system of patriarchy where power is disproportionately located amongst men. It's important that as we get started that we describe what it is to be a feminist. Feminism is a set of theories and strategies for social change that take gender as their central focus in attempting to understand social institutions, processes, and relationships between people. Mainstream feminism holds the view that women suffer oppression and discrimination in a society run for men by men who have passed laws and created customs to perpetuate their privileged position. The focus here is on gender and power rather than class and power. Several concepts should be noted in this perspective. First, chivalry. Chivalry pertains to behaviors and attitudes towards certain individuals that treat them as though they are on a pedestal. Paternalism is the idea that women are weak by nature and less tough than men are, and therefore they need to be protected for their own good. In a broader context, what this means is that our society supports the idea that men can be independent, but at the same time promotes an idea that women should be dependent on the society for all of their needs as well as their well-being and safety. And then the last concept that's important to this perspective is patriarchy. Patriarchy refers to the subordinate role of women in male dominance. The idea that society is structured in such a way that women are forced to be subordinate to men's wills and their rules. Several topics have been discussed in feminist criminology. The first topic is the idea of the generalizability problem, which looks at whether or not theories of crime can be used to explain both female and male offending. The second problem that feminist theories of criminal behavior aim to address is the gender ratio problem. In this particular line of research or theorizing has been aimed at trying to explain why it is that men are more likely than women and women are less likely than men to engage in criminal or delinquent behavior. Several theories have been posited to look at gender. Bailey and Chesney Lynn argue that gender is not a natural fact, but a complex social, historical, and cultural product. It is related to, but not simply derived from, biological sex differences and reproductive capacities. They also argue that gender and gender relations order social life and social institutions in fundamental ways, and that gender relations are constructs of masculinity and femininity and are not symmetrical but are based on an organizing principle of men's superiority and social and political economic dominance over men. So several theories have been examined. So for example, there's the power control theory. The power control theory argues that male and female children are raised differently, and that the expectation for male children is that they would be thrill seeking and that they would be independent, whereas female children are more controlled and subordinated in houses by their parents. As a result of this, the power control theory makes the argument that women, due to this socialization and difference in parenting amongst the different genders, will be less likely to take the chances to engage in crime. Then there's also the chivalry hypothesis, which is another perspective. This perspective argues that because of paternalism in a patriarchal system, the criminal justice system behaves more leniently when dealing with female offenders. All of these are different ideas that have been put forth by this perspective. The policy implications for this particular perspective argues that we should focus on building alternative institutions that help to deal with the different needs of various genders, specifically women. So, for example, rape crisis centers and shelters, domestic abuse programs, legislative reform is another policy implication, that we could pass laws that work to aim to help women deal with their unique issues that may force them or contribute towards female criminality. And then lastly, research that empowers women is important. Research that takes women's experiences seriously and centers on the idea that the personal is the political. These are some of the ideas that were viewed in this particular chapter. I'd like for each of you to read over this chapter, take notes, and send me any questions that you may have.